This podcast is supported in part by Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization that advocates for ideas, policies, and values to build a stronger North Carolina, one that works for all its people as a strong, diverse, multiracial democracy. Learn more about them at carolinaforward.org.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Foxfire Dispatch. I'm Gina Baxter, your co-host coming in from Western North Carolina.
And I'm Liz Purvis, your co-host from little old Granville County, North Carolina. And we're really excited to be recording our not first episode of the Foxfire Dispatch.
Yeah,
Because this will
y'all.
probably not be the first thing we release, but
This is take one, so y'all are getting some behind the scenes right now. We just figured out how our microphones work, so congratulations to us.
so today we are going to dive into some political labels. Because what better way to spend a rainy spring afternoon than finding out just how left of center we very likely are, the two of us.
Yes, I'm fascinated by this conversation. I also wish that I could do it with myself at different ages.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting. I mean, I feel like probably the first time that I took one of these, like, where are you on the spectrum test was like around the 2016, like knowing how I felt, but also like not being deeply embedded 8 years ago and with the Democrats, like the way that I am now, honestly. And
Do you want to talk about what you do with the party?
so I am a county party chair here in Granville and was just elected for a 2-year term. And I'm also the secretary of the Young Democrats in North Carolina. Do you wanna mention that, or do you feel like you want that to fly under the radar?
No, I think it's okay. And I think it's honestly okay to talk about what parts of it need to fly under the radar and what don't. And I think it can be part of what we put out there. I am a local government representative in the town that I've lived in since I was 12, and it's a nonpartisan position. So a lot of what I've been working through for the 6 months that I've been in this office is how to juggle being a whole person with a spectrum of political beliefs. And in a hyper partisan and polarized time, especially around messaging, Western North Carolina just experienced Hurricane Helene, and that led to a lot of very localized polarization and messaging. So when we talk about federal aid, some of the partisan conversation comes up, my belief system, all the way to the very top of what I believe is that local conversations are needle movers and game changers. And I campaigned by knocking on doors, and I fully believe in the power of canvassing. So my role influences my perspective for sure. And it also feels a little bit separate from some of the political ideology stuff that we're about to dive into.
I imagine that like the nonpartisan nature of those roles is also something that's going to come up because like that's something that can differ county to county. And like here straight up, like Democrats may be choosing to sit out of those elections. I would argue that Republicans have been active in them for perhaps a couple decades now. And that's a conversation that we're having a lot here in Oxford. And the county parties can be such a driver for social change. We have a mayor that in 2021 had 35 whole votes. His challenger got 1 vote. That was it. 36 people voted in STEM in 2021.
People?
36. Yeah. Yeah. Like you could go knock those doors in 2 days.
Well, and that's something that I think rhetoric is changing around. So the standard that we expect when municipal elections happen on their own years, when they're not part of a general election, we expect 20-ish% is like a high estimate of the population percentage that we expect to see. Doing all of that canvassing work, expecting a 20% return as the high number is very small. Math is not our strong suit.
Math? No, we're not math people. We're humanities people.
We don't want to talk about math, but we do have to, and we will. But it's too low. It's less than 10%. It's less than 5%.
And Granville is historically a really high voter turnout county, like one of the highest in the state. It was 76 or 78% of voters, eligible voters voted in 2024 for us. And as I understand it, like
In the general?
that's pretty good in the general, yeah. I mean, it's not as high as Cumberland County. Cumberland County like has us beat for sure. I know they are the highest voter turnout in the state. And to me, I am really hoping that in our midterm year, we're still hitting 75. I'd love to hit 80. I think 80 is maybe an unrealistic goal potentially, but like I'm really hoping that we see very, very minimal. Like we're going to see drop off this year, obviously, because only people within city limits vote this year in municipal elections. But I'm hoping that next year with the midterms that we will be able to keep turnout close to as high as it was in a presidential election year.
That's so interesting. Okay, I am on the ncsbe.gov website, which, if y'all don't know about NCSBE, it's where you get all the fun data. It's the North Carolina State Board of Elections website. I know Liz was on it earlier this week because she put it in her stories because we're nerds. For people who claim to not like math, we sure do a lot of digging around data.
Facts.
But everything that you could ever possibly need is on there. So I'm looking at the 2023 municipal election turnouts, and it is 15.9% statewide.
Oh, I hate that so much.
Yeah, that sucks. And that was
And just
on
like,
election day, on 11/7/23, which was election day.
and I do think this really comes back to showing people that their votes matter because can you imagine how much we could transform this state if in off years we got to 40%?
Yeah.
How much could be possible?
Yeah, there are already efforts underway to undermine municipal engagement, such
Oh,
as,
heck yeah.
right,
Mhm.
like in a local bill in early 2024, our municipal elections were moved from off years to general years. It was called the Increased Municipal Voter Turnout Bill. What it was a way to get people to vote a straight ticket based on what is handed to them at the door at a general election polling site, right? You go in
Mhm.
there, you know who you're going to vote for president, probably if you're going to vote for president, or you know that you're not going to vote for president. You may not know who you're going to vote for your county commissioner, but if you are walking in and somebody from the party that you align with hands you a piece of paper and says, these are the candidates that we're endorsing all the way down the ballot, that's your work done for you. And that's the candidate's work done for them. Even in a nonpartisan election, the parties can still endorse. The candidate doesn't have to accept that endorsement and they don't have to operate off of that endorsement, but the party is still going to tell people who they think their party members should vote for.
Yeah. I have complicated feelings about that because I feel so strongly that blue ballots are like such a good thing because a lot of people don't do the research. I am super plugged in, and in 2023, I did not have all my city commissioner decisions figured out before I walked up to the polling place, and some of them were literally electioneering, and I talked to those folks, and part of it is like it's hard to find information about folks online for local stuff. People don't necessarily have a website. And so in that way, like I see those sample ballots that we get to give out as like such a good possibility for voter education for the folks who are already like kind of with us.
Sure.
But I can also see how that does really lock things in more to straight ticket voting and is less encouraging to, hey, we vote every year. There are different elections every year, and you got to do your research each time for those elections.
And it's a lot. I think that we're coming full circle into a conversation we're probably going to have often. It's just a lot for your average working person to maintain all of that information. Like the state auditor, I don't know that people are really getting amped about that. I think that there is something really interesting about the Council of State races in general that people get attached to certain names because of what they've seen in their communities or because of what party alignment they have. but asking people to maintain all of that is really, really difficult. And I think that having ballots at the entrance is totally a helpful aid to people who walk in and don't know. I think that changing election dates to put people everything on a general election takes away some of the agency of municipalities around those elections, which is a whole other conversation we could have about the state legislature and what their focus on municipalities and local authority is right now. But that is a whole other
Maybe
thing.
for another pod.
Yeah, that would be 7 hours of yapping.
So, do we want to take one of these different quizzes and see
Yes.
where one
Okay.
of them is the Pew Research quiz? Like, Pew puts people into 9 different categories from like progressive left to Christian conservative.
Okay.
Like,
I
so
think
maybe
the
we check.
most BuzzFeed we can make it.
Then let's do the Pew one.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a survey that like is essentially comparing you to more than 10,000 US adults, again by Pew.
Okay.
So if you had to choose, would you rather have a smaller government providing fewer services or a bigger government providing more services?
The latter. What if I take it for you and you take it for me? Like we record each other's answers. Is
Okay,
that
sure.
something or is that messy?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So when you say you favor a bigger government providing more services, do you think it would be better to modestly expand on current services or greatly expand on current services?
In this, the year of our Lord 2025, I'm going to say greatly expand.
I mean, I agree with greatly. I'm
Okay.
also on a greatly world where like I would like universal basic income, please.
Yes.
That's greatly expanded.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's some room. Yeah.
Okay, so which of the following statements come closest to your view? America's openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. Or if America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation.
Are we in agreement that this question is laughable?
Yes. Okay. So yes,
Okay.
that is the first choice. It's like one of the things.
What
that,
is
like,
our
really
identity as a nation if not that we are a nation of immigrants?
Huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm super curious about the people who answer this question in the second one though. Like I'm curious about what people think of as our identity as a nation. Because
I think there's a lot of white supremacists here in this country.
I think that there was a time like the idea of American greatness and American exceptionalism, I think plays into that second part of that question. Like what our identity as a nation is to some people is that we built the tallest buildings and we revolutionized industry. Maybe, do you think that's something?
Yeah, I guess I have like I have a hard time like seeing other perspectives on this because I feel like it's like I feel like there is something close to an objective answer here, which is America is fucked up and complicated, and at its ideal, it's like a place where all are free to come and build the better life they want, but also in practice it has not been that, has not lived up to that for many, many years in terms of quotas, in terms of closing the border, in terms of building a fucking wall, like and so there's this like push pull between with like what do you mean, what is America, what are our the highest ideals, the best that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and those thinkers could come up with into the 21st century, understanding like yes, they didn't name women or black people, but we're fucking here too, and natural human rights are natural human rights.
Yeah. And I think that perspective is relevant because it colors a lot of the conversations that we're having. Like that is when a lot of us on the left are out here being like, what does he mean make America great again? And we're like being quippy about it. And I think there's space for seeking to understand what drives half of America to feel like we were great and we lost our greatness. And yeah, I think a lot of it is based in bigotry. And I also think that there is like a historical misrepresentation that we've been fed that is at the crux of the nuance of that conversation. So I just think it's an interesting, like, deep dive if we get into, I don't know, there's like some Teddy Roosevelt stuff in there. There's some like, we're exploring the wilderness. We're capable of doing anything. We're sick children who can become military generals. Like there's a lot of that hope in the American idea that I think kind of promulgates this concept of American exceptionalism. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Okay, question 2 seems cut and dry though. Let's move on.
So, question 3, in general, would you say experts who study a subject for many years are usually better at making good policy decisions about that subject? Usually worse, et cetera, et cetera. Neither better nor worse than other people at making decisions about their expert subject. I also think this one is very obvious and that we would both agree.
Okay, great. Let's do it. Let's move on. Anything you want to say about it?
Just that again, it's like I think what a dumb take to be like, yes, the experts are worse at their expert subjects than other people. If that is your God-given opinion, you need to learn how to do research yourself. But
couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. Okay, question 4. Thinking about increased trade of goods and services between the U.S. and other nations in recent decades, would you say that the U.S. has gained more than it has lost because increased trade has helped lower prices and increase the competitiveness of some U.S. businesses? Or would you say that it has lost more than it has gained because increased trade has cost jobs in manufacturing and other industries and lowered wages for some U.S. workers? This is a sticky one.
I feel like gained more. Have you seen the stock market over time since, say, the 80s or whatever? But at the same time, we both know that that is not indicative of the success and wellness of your average middle to working class to poor, like North Carolinian human across the United States. I can see a complicated and nuanced answer that is like, have you seen what happened to the factories in Detroit? No,
Yeah.
but I would go with gained more overall personally. But you're torn. Talk to me about how you're feeling.
I mean, I think this question covers too much in one question. I think that there are ways in which it has lowered wages for some US workers.
Or stagnated them,
Right? And then that's a conversation about labor and why we don't have any power as workers anymore / have ever. I guess overall, I would say gained, but reluctantly. I would like for my answer to be like, this should be 5 sub questions. Let's get into all of them. But that's not an option. So I'm going to say gained.
So after you saying that, I do think, and maybe this is like a different day or whatever, but I do think you would like the idea shapes quiz because some of its questions, it starts with 2 options and it's like, pick one of these or show me all the options. And then it expands to like a more nuanced, like 6 or 7 different statements. And I thought that was an interesting way to like get more at, if you have a gut reaction, then I don't really identify, like I'm somewhere in the middle or neither one of these fits. Like that kind of helped find a statement that I was like, oh, I really do agree with this statement, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're both saying gained. And how much more, if anything, needs to be done to ensure equal rights for all Americans, regardless of their racial or ethnic background? A lot, a little, nothing at all.
That's a crazy question. Okay. Well, this one makes up for the nuance of the last one because this one is like the most black and white, no pun intended question. I'm going to say a lot.
To us, to us for sure. But I think what we know about this country is that like that is a more complicated question or there are folks who see that as as simple as see that, and the fact that it is not clear to enough of a critical mass of us that like these inequities need to be rectified in a really serious way. But okay, so this has like a follow-up question about this, and which comes closer to your view about what needs to be done to ensure equal rights for all Americans, regardless of racial or ethnic backgrounds, even if neither of these is exactly right. So option 1, most US laws and major institutions need to be completely rebuilt because they are fundamentally biased against some racial and ethnic groups. Or 2, while there are many inequities in US laws and institutions, necessary changes can be made by working within the current system. I'm so curious. I really, this is one I was like, I am so curious what Gina is going to say about this and why.
I'm gonna go with option A. I think that
Okay.
and it makes me think of even like Citizens United. Like it makes me think of case law that has laid the groundwork for a lot of impossible efforts at this point. Like there are
Mhm.
just we've lost the guardrails and we see
Mhm.
the fallout of that in the fact that right now we have no guardrails. So to me, I mean, I'm doing my best with option B because that's where we are. But
Yeah, so see, I answered option B, and like I think this is the first one that we're diverging on because like while I agree with most like these institutions and laws are fundamentally biased against some racial and ethnic groups, I also like the completely rebuilt part feels a little more anarcho to me in the complete rebuilding, who dies because they can't get their medication? Who doesn't get their cancer treatment because there is no health care?
well, and to me that's already happening because we don't have a good system.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I would 100% agree. Like, there's a system that needs to be rebuilt. Like, insurance is fundamentally broken.
Fundamentally broken.
And I guess that is like, that does count as a major institution.
Yeah, well, and that's something too that should be like red flagging us, right? Like we can't even tell what major institutions are because so many capitalist institutions are government adjacent.
Yeah. Yeah. Or propped up by
Hmm.
subsidies or forgivable loans where like your average person is completely locked out of loan forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but for the sake of us taking this quiz, I'm going to keep my first answer so that we can
Okay.
see how and if we diverge.
Okay.
So, which of the following statements come closest to your view? Business corporations take too much profit, or most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit. I think we both agree on this.
Okay. We're back in
Yeah, because I
agreement.
think there's like no, like to me, it's like it has to be that one. It cannot be true that most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit when in North Carolina the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. When in fucking Los Angeles or New York City, you need to make six figures to like rent by
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Question 7. How much, if at all, would it bother you to regularly hear people speaking a language other than English in public places in your community? A lot, some, not much, not at all.
I love it and I want to hear people speaking other languages all the time.
I am in very much agreement.
Yeah, everybody's having their own life experience. That's cool. And it's also not my business.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like not for you. The stranger having a conversation, not
Mhm.
for me.
Not for you.
Um,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's so funny that that's our boundary. Like, there's just no way that it's not xenophobic if you think about the number of times that you hear people having conversations that you don't have the context of in general. Like, do you also get mad when you hear general contractors talking to plumbers about the specifics of plumbing because you don't understand that? No. Like, why do you give a shit? Okay.
which of these statements best describes your opinion about the United States? The U.S. stands above all other countries in the world. The U.S. is one of the greatest countries in the world, along with some others. There are other countries that are better than the U.S.
I don't even know what this means.
I'm gonna say that Finland is doing a lot fucking better, and that if I could opt into their social services, I would do it.
I mean, I think there are other countries that are
I just don't see
more sound.
how anybody could genuinely, and I say this knowing my dad still says this is the greatest country in the world, but I don't genuinely know how that is a real opinion you can have when we have elected the motherfucker in the White House twice, not in a row, but twice. Like
Ugh.
internment camps, like Japanese internment camps, concentration camps
Yes.
for
I don't mean to
migrants.
laugh at that,
Like,
but it's just like,
but
but it's just, yes, the rationalization of like those two things coexisting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're moving on.
Okay. All right.
What comes closer to your view of candidates for political office? At least one candidate who shares most views, or none of these candidates represent views. And now as soon as I say that, I'm like, oh, well, you heard my answer, but I did not hear your answer because my computer went black.
There's usually at least one candidate who shares most of my views.
Cool.
What's yours?
Okay. Yeah, I agree. At least in the primary,
At least in the primary. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
You want to do the next one?
Yeah. In general, how much do white people benefit from advantages in society that Black people do not have?
Oh, a great deal. Let's be real.
Okay, great. Agreed. No notes. Would you say people who are convicted of crimes in this country serve too much time in prison, too little time in prison, or about the right amount of time in prison?
I feel like without intimately knowing, my instinct is too much time in prison. But I also think that is one that is nuanced in that it would be great if whatever prison is was a restorative, rehabilitative, it came through a restorative justice lens, and there's no time for that. But what prison is as it is, I feel like too many people are in that for too long and it makes things worse.
Agreed on all points.
I would like that. That would be cool.
And also the prison industrial complex and local jails. There was just an article that came out about Buncombe County, which is the county to the north of where I live, where Asheville is. And a lot of people who were incarcerated in Buncombe County jail facilities by the sheriff's department didn't receive the money that they went to jail with when they got out. So if they had cash in their pockets, they never saw it again.
Oh, that's so corrupt and yucky.
Yep. I mean, you take everything out of your pockets, right? You give that stuff to somebody. You don't.
You take everything out, you get everything back. It feels like that's what is supposed to happen, right?
Yeah, I don't think that anybody who has ever been in any kind of system at all expects that. So I think the more interesting part of it to me was that it was getting coverage, because I think that's always been the expectation that if you go to jail with $50 in your pocket, you're not seeing it again. But the question is, where does it go? This isn't inmates' personal funds are not allocated anywhere in a county budget, as far as I know.
Yeah, and it's not like it's going automatically into a online system that they could then use to
right,
within the jail or prison system,
right,
which could make sense if that was what was happening, but that's not what's happening.
And I think that's the line that is given, but what's the recourse if that's not the case? Somebody has to believe you that you walked in with $50 when you just got accused and possibly convicted of a crime. It's just a dark system.
It is. And I know this is a side note, and I feel like there are so many ways it could be made better. And I know that that is our jail, there are aspects of our county jail here in Granville that our sheriff really actively is making efforts to make better in really real ways. All of last year, he was helping people register to vote who were eligible to vote in the jail and informing them about voting deadlines and things like that.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I thought that was really, really cool. So there are ways to have, well, actually, I don't know if I believe this, but I want to believe that there are ways to have a carceral system that understand and honor the humanity in people and allow people to bring their whole selves to their existence, and presumably maybe the flawed bits that hurt somebody get made better, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's so not the system as we know it either.
Yeah. And again, going back to the capitalism being the root problem, it doesn't make anybody money if we close down a bunch of prisons because everybody's rehabilitated. And it really, I recognize saying that sounds conspiratorial, but we make money off of that.
No, and I do think I think private prisons are maybe one place where I actually think that all of this should be managed by the state. And if the state can't manage it, then something needs to change. But the purpose of this is not to make money. The purpose of this is to keep people safe and or also have some consequences for various serious actions, regardless of how you feel about whether we should have consequences.
Yeah. Because I do think it is to keep everyone else safe. In severe, specific, and relatively rare cases, I do think that because our society is so ill-equipped to help people, that is one way of keeping a community safe. I don't think it's humane, but I think that it is an option. So
Mhm.
I see that point of view, especially around offenders with children.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 15. Which of the following statements comes closest to your view? Religion should be kept separate from government policies, or government policies should support religious values and beliefs?
Oh, I'll take religion should be kept separate for 500, Alex.
This one is so funny to me because the subtext of that question is a specific religion, I would say.
I imagine. Yeah, and I mean this I feel like also like a way to phrase that is do you believe in the separation of church and state? But I
Absolutely.
imagine more people would just go towards yes without thinking
Yeah.
if you phrased it that way.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
In the future, do you think that US policies should try to keep it so that America is the only military superpower? Or would it be acceptable if another country became as militarily powerful as the US? I'm curious how you would answer this.
Yeah, okay, this is getting into, like, really interesting stuff to me. I mean, some of the options that are imminent are kinda scary. Also, so is America.
I started thinking about the vast inequity between how big our military is and how big all the other militaries are combined,
Mhm.
and how scary that would be if someone really grew
Yeah.
to as big as we are, and how much that would be a how much that could be like really legitimately a threat.
Yeah.
And I think in part, just to be real, because like I am a selfish person who wants a safe home and no other militaries on US soil, that I landed on that like we should try to keep it that America is the only military superpower, not because I love where we are, and in fact I would prefer if we like pulled it down, but we could cut it in half and we'd still be the superpower of the world, you know?
Mhm.
Like
I'm
it's
not
selfish,
sure.
but I think that's what I think.
Yeah.
Like and totally okay if we land in 2 different places with that.
Well, I think that's such an important thing to dig into too, that, like, it does matter that we live here, that we're talking about it as people who live here and who have the security. I mean, for our whole lives, we've had that level of security that, like, I've never felt super worried about an invasion because we're the biggest military superpower in the world. Also,
Yeah,
today's
I
Memorial Day, so it feels a little poignant to be talking about it.
yeah, no, that's for real. There's a fuck ton of shit that, like, happened in Iraq and Afghanistan that,
Mhm.
like, hurt civilians and that, like, we would never agree was okay. If somebody said, "Hey, here's what happened." Growing up in, like, rural Catawba County, the recruiters were a big part of high school and JROTC,
Mhm.
and it was a path for so many people, so many boys, you know, but I think I also saw it break people I cared about physically and, like, ruin their lives at 19. I saw,
Yeah.
like, you know, people who felt like they really had no other option, but they could see the world this way and get paid a real wage and have no idea what they're really signing up for. People get told they're gonna get to defuse bombs, and it's boys who can't spell shit, like, they can't pass a test,
Yeah.
and they're never gonna be able to do that. And that makes me so angry because 'cause they're kids, you know?
Yeah, and I think too, like, maybe the classism of it is what really rankles me about it. My dad is a Vietnam
Mhm.
vet, and so I grew up with a deep understanding that war is not a game. My dad never, ever wanted to talk about Vietnam and what he saw. He also was not a therapy guy, so we're not processing this together as a family at any point.
Mhm.
We did go to the Vietnam Memorial when I was a young teenager, and my mom
Mhm.
was like, "Hey, I'm gonna need you and your brother to shut the fuck up and just let your dad look at this wall. Like, I need y'all to act like you're not here. It's gonna be a weird and emotional time for him. He's not usually an emotional
Mhm.
guy. I need you guys to let him do that." And we were like, "Okay." Like, it was a very jarring moment to see him kind of process any of what he had seen and been through. And I think that really shaped my understanding of who joins the military, right? We have this perception of the jarhead thing and people who have all this military pride, and I think that comes from that sense of community, but there's also this very real experience of a very violent system that I think we can conclusively say is fairly predatory. I mean, people do voluntarily join it, but
But how voluntary is it when your parents make $35,000 a year and you never had a shot at going to college?
right,
And
right,
yeah.
right. And the GI Bill is presented to you.
Mhm.
Or in my dad's case, if you were drafted.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And I know like with Vietnam, that's a really particular in that like those soldiers faced a lot of hatred and ridicule and
yes.
negativity coming back in a way that we never ever as a country had treated soldiers before, I don't think.
No, and I don't think that we ever recovered from it. I don't think that we ever regained a social sense of how we interact with our military as kind of a universal. We had a heroism about it in World War II, and then public sentiment. And I think this really informs my adult politics, is acknowledging that like I saw the agenda that I subscribed to really hurt someone that I love. He was treated really badly when he came back home, and nobody cared that he had been drafted.
That he didn't have a choice to do that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think the perception was like, and liberalism still embodies this, that we are the agenda of moralism. So let's see what our results are. Yes.
Okay. I think we're both the same.
We're both as far left as we could get on this quiz.
Yeah, I think the idea shapes quiz I think has a little bit more like lefty left and righty right, like
Okay.
all on both sides. So maybe on a different day we take that one because yeah. So I got progressive left the first time I took this too, and was also like, I'm as far left as it goes on this quiz,
right? Like I don't. Okay, they didn't ask us anything about Stalin, so.
And also, like, only 6% of the general public is, like, in that group of people. Yeah.
Do these totals equal 100?
I would believe that it doesn't because there are also people further left and further right, and that they are chunking it off.
Okay.
And like 31, 41, 54, 60. Oh, maybe it is actually 70. Yeah, it's
Oh,
100.
it certainly is. I just did it on my calculator while you were doing it in your head.
I can do simple math in my head. The basics, only the basics these days.
Nobody asked me to add anything.
Yeah. I was a nerd. I really liked everything up to Cal 1 except for geometry.
I loved geometry.
I think our brains work differently.
Yes, same big three, different brains. Oh, my dog's here. She is soaking wet. This is so cool. I let my dog anywhere she wants.
I'm really glad that we can like talk about that. Like it's really cool to be able to talk about this, and like we'll figure out what needs to go out and what needs to wait or not at all. But like,
and I think
thank you for talking about this with me.
I wanted to ask you okay, so we started the first time that we had a conversation that was like to the side of the group chat, like when you and I were like, this girl might be cool, was because some unfortunate soul in the group chat brought up astrology, and you and I both were like, hello, it's our time to shine. We're doing a politics and astrology crossover. Let's go. And we both realized that we have the same sun sign, rising sign, and moon sign, which for astrology heads is called the big three. So I wanted to talk to you about what astrology apps you use.
We have talked well and long about serious issues and where we land on the political spectrum. Yes. I use Chani predominantly, but like I started out with the Sanctuary and Time Passages, and I probably have both of those on my phone. I used CoStar like ages and ages ago and stopped because it came out that they were like leaning into the snark and giving people a hard time, and I was like, oh no, I don't need drama from the computer. What about you?
So Sanctuary and Chani, and I still do use CoStar even though I know the lore, just because whatever.
The aesthetics are good.
And I was gonna say we should read our astrology apps, but we have the same big three, so they're the same for us, probably.
This is true. Yeah.
Which I didn't think about.
Yeah.
I was like,
no,
oh,
we'd
this will
have
be
to
fun.
go like pretty far
Yeah.
down.
We'd have to get to like a Neptune.
Yeah, no, but I mean, also that could be kind of cool because like we could. So like one of the things that I brought over to the office was this thing that Channy did for this year. It's this 2025 yearbook.
Oh, that's so cute.
And it's got like all the major transits, and it's got a specific section for each sign. And so she encourages you to like read your rising sign and focus, like, and that's like her modality. And I like that, honestly. Like I love Leo. I think, there are ways that I am a Leo. Like I like my hair big. Like I feel like that stereotypically Leos have like big good hair. But I also feel like the Aquarius rising is more like my heart, my journey, my like the systems shifting and like pouring out of what doesn't serve, kind of like Aquarian energy. I really resonate with. And then like Pisces moon is just like, yeah, I cry a lot.
Yeah. I cry like every day. Like everything makes me cry. I don't even think about it sometimes. Like someone will send me a song and I'm like, oh my God, that made me cry. And I don't even think about the fact that that makes some people uncomfortable because I'm such a crier that people will react and be like, oh, it did. I'm like, oh yeah. I forgot to preface this by telling you that something makes me cry every day. And sometimes it's a flower. Like it's like anything.
I am probably a little less in touch with my emotional side than that, but there have definitely been seasons of my life that have been like that or have been real I cry every day kind of seasons. I think now we're on some mood stabilizers that tamp it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Those will help.
We got to do what we got to do.
Yes.
Do you identify strongly with like one of your big three over the other?
I'm probably with you about Aquarian vibes. Sometimes when I tell people I'm a Leo, they're like, oh, for sure you are. That makes sense. But I'm always like, does it? Because I hate being perceived. I want to have a one-on-one conversation and engage in a very personal way. I don't want to like be on a stage necessarily. Although now that I've done it a handful of times to run for office, I kind of get it. Kind of into it. But it's not my default for sure.
Yeah, I think we have the capacity to turn it on. And some Leos have, like, there's a woman I follow, a hairstylist in Charlotte, who is a Leo sun, Leo moon. And like she is Leo all the time. Extrovert, all, yeah, big energy, like, or at least that's who she is on social media. But I feel like I am with you in the like, I don't want to be perceived. My ideal place of leadership is a strong second in command, like in the shadows.
Yep.
But at the same time, like we can do it, right? Because like you're a fucking city council and I'm leading the Critical County Democratic Party.
Yeah, we can. I know that this is going to be like contradictory to what we both just agreed to do in starting this podcast, but I'm pretty introverted.
No, I completely, like, I too identify as an introvert who is constantly told that is surprising. But by the like, do you get your energy from other people or from like interior time?
I think I do extrovert stuff because there's no other option often, because I like to do stuff that revolves around, you can't be into politics and be introverted and do anything effective. Like politics is about talking to people. So you just kind of got to get over it.
And data shows this is the effective way to do it. So Aquarian's like, all right, I'm going to follow the data. I guess I'm doing the thing I'm uncomfortable with. This is a good arena of life for us to be like pushing out of a comfort zone in search of what is effective.
Yeah.
Canvassing and phone calls are this much and this much effective. That I feel like more people might, I don't know, get out of their comfort zones and do the thing that needs doing. I just really kept hammering last year, like, data says 10 times more effective than anything else. You have finite time in this life. are you going to be the most effective in like affecting this election, or are you going to be less than the most effective? And we did have some people who like some introverted people who canvassed through that and then became repeat canvassers. And so I'm probably going to keep trying to do that. Try that logic on folks.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to get into deep canvassing. Did you guys in the past campaign cycle, or maybe the previous one, do anything with Canyon Woodward and dirt road organizing?
No, I have not heard either of those names actually.
Okay, so Canyon is a Western North Carolina guy. He ran Chloe Maxman's campaigns in Maine, possibly. Canyon, I forget. And their campaign strategy that won her this election was based in deep canvassing. So he came and did some trainings in Henderson County and got some folks who were pretty on the fence about the efficacy of deep canvassing or of canvassing in general, and also like the comfort level around canvassing. And the conversation was really about finding common ground with people who you use minivan, I presume. Okay. For people who don't, minivan is an app that we use when we canvass. It gives us an idea of whose door we're knocking on, and it helps us determine the most efficient way to knock on doors. So you can filter by likelihood that somebody's going to vote for a Democratic candidate, how often a household votes, how many people live in the household. You can do all kinds of demographics filters. But when you're on minivan, you get the option to like skip a house, to drop literature, to have a conversation with this person and leave notes for the next canvasser. So using all of this data that we have available to us makes door knocking in the present day very different than what it used to be when a lot of Henderson County Democratic Party volunteers were knocking on doors, which was people get assigned a street and they knock on every door on that street and they hope that they're not. Yes. Is your reaction to how scary that is? Yeah, it's terrible.
And how not efficient and how badly that could I'm just imagining dogs, guns, like things that make people go, I will never do this again. And you can't blame them.
Yes. And it's stuff that I was torn when I was running about even talking about, because there is a very real chance that people don't want you on their property. It's a very invasive and risky move to walk up to someone's door and knock on it.
And I think that's part of why like training is so important, because like I'm very like, if there's a fence, if there's a closed gate on the porch, they've said no thank you.
Absolutely.
Like that's what this house has decided. You mark them inaccessible or not home, depending on what level of inaccessible that is.
Yep. And you're not, so your option when you're walking around a neighborhood and there's a fence or a gate, or what I have at my house is a sign that says like, beware of dog, which LOL. I have one dog that's 20 pounds and one dog that's 25 pounds. I have it up there because I've canvassed and because I don't want people to walk into my yard and be startled, like being caught unaware.
By a dog that is maybe off leash in its yard and isn't normally going to go anywhere, but like is going to be startled by a person that they don't recognize because it's a dog and it's doing its job.
Yeah. And then the very real possibility that like is so upset that you're on their property that they bring out a weapon. And when you're in rural North Carolina, that's very real. I mean,
that's very real. They could have had a 50-foot long driveway, so you got to hike to get off of there. Like and
it's gravel and uphill and nobody, and they've got 20 acres behind their house, so they don't expect anybody to be coming up there unless they know them.
I mean, it's part of the reason that we really try to send people out in pairs, unless it's like a really, really experienced canvasser who is very willing to go solo. You know, it's also part of the reason I tell people like it's very okay to like mark these houses and give us the helpful information that this was a house that couldn't be knocked, because that gets it off of our universe, and then we don't send somebody else there. I'm just thinking of, I mean, because we have like 5 little municipalities in Granville, and then we've got a ton of farmland, and so it's if you're going down one of those little 2-lane roads and it's people 5 acres apart, or like yeah. Again, like I'm not going and opening the gate at a farm and assuming that they're gonna react in any kind way.
No.
That said, I have also had a situation where like I was walking down a long driveway and I'm blind. I am very visually impaired, and so I got to the trees that had the sign that said no trespassing, etc., and was like, "Oh, turning around." And the lady came out with her kid and was like, "Hey, what do you need? How are you?" And like we talked and I gave her the literature and I was like, "I'm sorry. I just saw your sign. I was headed away." And like that was fine. But also, let's be real, that is easier as a white
Yep.
lady than it is for a lot of other people with different identities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. A story for another day, but we had a school board candidate who specifically asked for support in some areas of the county because of the reality of what it's like to be a Black woman in the rural South sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. That also just like really, really sucks because you want people to feel like they can participate in this democracy to the fullest extent in all of the ways that they want to be able to participate. And even with really good training, that can happen sometimes. We cannot control for those other people. And that is also part of the reason I would say that I am such a like advocate for using the support scores and the targets. Like because and I know some people say, and I do see some of the merits and the arguments of like continuing to push and expand those scores so that we aren't
Absolutely.
just like giving ourselves a smaller and smaller window. But in rural counties like ours, I told the Harris campaign, and we literally like we had trouble working with the Harris campaign because they wanted to go down to 25. And I was
25
like,
is
"You are
scary."
kidding. You will get someone killed, and I will not be sent like you can do your own stuff, but until you agree with me that 40 is the floor, and that's pushing it for
Yeah.
us." Like
So what
yeah.
Liz is talking about right now is what we call a voter scorecard, and it's out of 100, it's 0 to 100, how likely the person whose door you're knocking on is to vote for a Democratic or progressive candidate. So we get this data from the party, right? It's from the state
Yeah, it's
party.
from the DNC
Oh, okay.
specifically.
The DNC, the National Party. And generally we'll try to keep our door knocking to people who are at least somewhat likely to vote for Democratic candidates for lots of reasons. What you just mentioned, I think, is the most tangible one, right? We don't want to send people out there to get into some kind of trouble or to get into a fight. Like the goal here is not to imagine that we can persuade people to change who they are and the core of their belief. It's to have a conversation with your neighbors and to open the door to a conversation that they hadn't had before.
Mhm.
There's also the efficacy piece of like, we don't want to waste time knocking on the door of someone who's never voted for a Democrat in their entire life and is completely content voting for the party that they vote for every time. We're not going to go out there and say, "Hey, I'm a Democrat, I'm working with the Democratic Party, and I would love for you to vote for Democrats," because that's not a good use of our time or our volunteer hours. And we know that there's a model for some expansion around what makes sense and what doesn't, depending on what area you're in. So in some areas, a 40% voter is maybe a little less risky than in other areas. So yeah, to your point, I think 40% and is the floor.
Yeah, and to their credit, the organizers on the ground for Harris were in agreement with me, and their hands were tied, and it was like an issue of things above them. But that's part of what like we really buckled down and coordinated with the state party because I was able to have that conversation with the state party and adjust the scores so that we got what made sense to us, because it was, I mean, the other reason that you might lower it is for density, right? For giving people like a denser area, especially in these rural places. But then the problem with that is that coin flip of will it be good, will it be bad? I got called a baby killer in 2022. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it was like ostensibly like a not the man I was knocking for, but his husband, like saying that. And yeah, yeah. But there are reasons we use these schools.
And we have in Henderson County, a pretty strict. Do you know the old song, You'll Never Walk Alone?
I don't think so.
It's from the musical Carousel, but it's been like adapted a lot of times. But anyway, my campaign policy was always, you're never going to do this by yourself, right? Like, you're never going to walk up to somebody's house that you don't know by yourself, because I'm not going to have that on my campaign team, and because you bleed volunteer interest when you do that. Because when people are made to feel uncomfortable, when they have volunteered to give their time and energy, and it's physically demanding to canvas. You're walking miles generally on a day when you're canvassing.
You were gonna hit your 10,000 steps.
You're gonna hit your steps. There's,
for the most part.
Catch me canvassing without my Apple Watch. Not gonna happen. I'm for sure clocking those steps. But when you ask people to do that, and then they have an experience that's so negative that they're turned off from volunteering in the future, and you've eroded the trust that they had in you, that's not worth it. I'd rather knock 20 less doors than have somebody have that experience. So I think that's where the local, where it matters so much that grassroots party experience is taken into account.
Yeah, and it's also like, okay, if somebody has a bad experience of their first time canvassing a turf of, let's say, 30 doors, like maybe your average-ish kind of turf, and they don't ever come back again, or they go out with somebody else and have someone to bounce off of, even if something vaguely uncomfortable might happen, have someone to like share that with, they're going to be that much more likely, one, not to catastrophize what has happened if it is like on the minor end of uncomfortable. And two, they're going to be more likely to come back again, and maybe they'll knock 40 or 60 or 100 doors for you.
And it can be really fun. I mean, I've had so much fun canvassing. If you can get people who are hype and into it, I mean, some of the best days that I spent campaigning were with friends or people who worked for the state, or who were, working for the state party. A couple of our field organizers out here were people that were like so sincerely hype on what we can do in rural communities that it just like warmed my heart. And I would be like, okay, walk around this neighborhood with me. And they'd be like, fuck yeah, that's what we want to do. And it was the best time. It was like the best, summer Saturdays. And you'd be like, I know election day isn't for 4 months, but let's talk about what you want to see in your community and how we align and what common ground we could find.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but, and I think what you said, like 4 months before election day, you're doing that. 5, 6, 7 months before election day. That's when we're doing that. If it's September, we're in get out the vote time. And I think that is an important part of the reason that the Democratic Party, need to have canvassing as close to year round as we can, because it gives us that capacity to have those deep listening conversations and to tread that ground, hopefully, so that like that ground that got deep canvassed is then also ground that we get to go get out the vote in. And then people are like, oh, there's some familiarity there,
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the starting early is so important. I mean, we did our first deep canvas here for 2025 in March.
Yes, I love that. Well, and you want to, especially when we're hoping for an upswing, right? Like when we know that people are in a position where they're like, hey, what's the plan here? I want somebody to come knock on my door and tell me that somebody has a plan.
So all that to say, deep canvassing, super important. Get out the vote canvassing. Also, obviously, shout out to Carolina Abortion Fund at carolinaabortionfund.org. They are a really, really great organization that focuses on getting people reproductive care in North and South Carolina right now. They've been pretty upfront about like their donations being kind of down lately, but that the need has been great. And so I think they're a really good Carolina organization to shout out and give attention to if you are so inclined to give attention to them.
I think there's room to really specifically say that we were the last bastion of reproductive freedom in the Southeast, and that was changed when one of our elected officials switched parties and switched her vote. And now North Carolina is in the same spot as many other states in the Southeast. So we know that reproductive health care is an urgent and constant issue. And we know that everyone deserves access to healthcare and safety. So your income should not determine whether you get access to that. And Carolina Abortion Fund is a collective that receives funds and disperses them based on need. So if you or a loved one need reproductive health care, they're a great place to go and a great place to donate.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons there is increased need is because after that person switched parties, there is now a 12-week abortion ban here in North Carolina. In some ways, we are still a bastion of access because South Carolina, as a lot of us may know, has a 6-week ban. But a 12-week ban is still really, real fucking early, too.
It's very
So
early.
the expenses for the folks who need these things increase exponentially when they have to travel further and further away to get the healthcare that they need. So if you feel so moved, great place to have a one-time or recurring donation. Other kind of fun action items. Yeah, fun is not the right word, but we'll go with that. You could take that Pew quiz that me and Gina have taken. It's at pewresearch.org/politics/quiz/political-typology. And that will take you to the same quiz about political ideologies that we just took. And then a quick question for reflection. What values do I want my political actions to truly represent? I know for me, it's like all about making the most good change as fast as possible.
Yeah. I think that I try to center mine around lifting up the needs and actions of the collective, and doing this podcast with you feels like a step in that direction. We get to spotlight people who are doing cool stuff and talk about the niche needs of North Carolina and our communities. So, yeah, feeling aligned.
Yes, yes. I feel like we also got to like learn some more about each other over the course of doing these quizzes and talking about it.
So just remember, y'all, that we are who we're waiting for. Don't forget it. Get in good trouble, and we'll see you next time.
Heck yeah. All right. Take care. Get in good trouble.
We love you. Most of you, probably everyone watching this.